everyone. We are at the cybersecurity briefing. So, what are we going to be talking about today is proactive versus reactive. We haven't had that discussion in quite some time. It used to be a selling point back in the day for managed services versus a what we call a break fix model. Managed services means it's contracted and you're supposed to have proactive IT as opposed to break fix, where something breaks, you call, hopefully they're able to fix it. Those were discussions we had probably 15, maybe even 18 years ago now, when we first started our company, first started selling those MSP services. We were a little bit different. We started with MSP. We were a software development shop. So we actually understood a lot of the proactive stuff. We had been working with a ton of enterprise at the time. So when we started our journey into managed service providers, uh, we weren't, we were kind of unique in that we started before it was the cool thing, before all the cool kids were doing it. We kind of went down that path just because we didn't know any better. But it was a conversation where we had to really talk about, and we're going to be talking about that in regards to cybersecurity and why there really is only a single IT model now if you want to have any chance of having a good cybersecurity stance. One of the core pieces of managed services is that ongoing monitoring and kind of closed loop system that happens. Um, from a taking care of your equipment and making sure that things are patched, all of the IT things that I talk about. So we talk about compliance, which drives security, which drives IT. And some of the security in IT is mixed up because IT also is monitoring some of those applications that are in the security stack to make sure A, that they're running, and B, to handle the events that are coming out of it. What I used to equate unmanaged versus managed was kind of like having a ship, being the captain of the ship, and managed is like you've got a compass and the thing's tuned and it's aligned to the stars at night using a sextant. It's a closed loop system, so you always kind of know where you are looking at the stars, and you know what direction you're going by looking at the compass. Even if things are slightly off, it's okay because they're going to get corrected. One will help the other. When you go to an unmanaged model or break fix, you just call someone when something's fixed. That ship can get significantly off the path. It can get significantly off course. And here's the worst part, you don't even know about it until you hit land or something happens and uh you need to know where you are and you have no idea. Companies could run this way in the past. The reliance on technology wasn't that much where they couldn't have a catastrophic failure of a system and perhaps be able to just march on as if you just go to the store, buy another computer, you put it in place, and you march on as if nothing happened. It was plausible back then, maybe 20 years ago, depending on the business. Not so much these days. These days, any data that you have to make sure that you have qualified and classified, that you have a program of identifying risk, and that your business is operating within those parameters at all times. Because the moment that the business gets outside that parameter, an opportunistic hacker, bad guy, bad actor, whatever you want to call them, that's when they're going to step in and take advantage. Now you have to remember, hackers only need to do one thing right, right? They only need to do one thing right. They need to expose one thing that isn't working in your entire myriad of things that you have inside of your business. Your responsibility is to make sure all things are going right. It's a pretty tall order. And that really kind of comes down to why it's so important to make sure that things are in the container, that they are doing what they're doing. And if you're not operating in that mode, I don't see how you can ever have a solid cybersecurity stance. Now, I hear what some people are probably thinking, and that's, well, if I take care of it myself, I'm not talking about having a third party provider here. Chances are really good. I would say like 99.999% of the companies out there will need an external provider. They do not have the internal expertise. They do not have access to the tools that are needed to do that continuous monitoring. Unless they're a technology company, it is highly unlikely they're going to have the skill sets and access to those tools to make an effective use of a internal proactive model. And again, I go again with that term proactive. What does that mean? Well, proactive just means that we are doing the things ahead of time, not waiting for things to get off course. We're correcting the course ahead of time. There's a minor course correction that needs to be happening. Going back to our boat analogy, we're constantly monitoring that. We're constantly readjusting the path of the ship to make sure it's going where it needs to go. The reactive model is we don't watch anything, we take care of everything else on the ship until something happens, until we hit land, until we're in weather we're not supposed to be, until we're in rough seas. That's a reactive model. Proactive model is we are constantly adjusting. And here's the thing, in the proactive model, we have a programmable compass. So we can kind of change the path as the meaning and the purpose and what the company does as a day-to-day operational thing, as that comes to be, we can change that compass. You have additional compliance measures that you need to take. Excellent. We add those things and we adjust the compass to make sure that the ship is still staying within the predefined route, predefined container we talk about. So it's really, you know, critical to keep that proactive model active. And as far as reactive, yeah, we're going to have stuff that happens that's reactive. But here's the thing, it's reactive, but it's not a reactive model in that you're going to have office issues and regular help desk issues. Those take place, guess what, inside of a kind of an envelope of their own with their own compass and their own thing, but they are part of an overall structured program on how a company helps another company make it through those small reactive things that you need to do. Office isn't working, emails giving issues, calendar issues, whatever it may be. That has its own little thing. But from a cybersecurity standpoint, having that proactive model doesn't mean that we're not going to have reactive situations. Stuff happens. People are going to click on things. We're not going to be able to prevent all attacks. It's just not uh, an achievable goal at this moment. Can't guarantee. It's not a guarantee that you're going to be able to do that. You can do everything right, which is maybe 99.99999% of everything that you can do, but don't forget that bad actor only needs to do that one thing to make it all kind of come to fruition. Now you have a reactive situation if something like that happens. The difference is that in the reactive IT model, you have no idea where you are. You have no idea what's installed. You have no idea where the data is. You have no clue. In a proactive model, you're probably going to have an incident response plan. So there's actually already a new envelope, a new compass, a whole new program sitting inside of your incident response plan when a cyber type issue event happens. You're going to have that defined as opposed to being completely blind on the other end. And what happens when you're completely blind? Well, I'll tell you, first of all, the downtime is much more significant. Why? Because anyone who's an incident response lead, a tech, they are going to have to take the time to go in and do all the stuff that you hadn't been doing, to find where the data is, to find where the risk was, to kind of figure that out. And if they can't figure it out, that's the worst scenario because you have no idea and you have to assume the worst, especially when it comes to compliance. You're going to have to assume the worst case scenario for that compliance board because that's the way it works. Kind of like parking, right? You go to park and you lose your ticket. You're only there for 15 minutes, but you can't find your ticket anywhere. Well, in the olden days at least, you would have to pay for the entire day or whatever the maximum rate is because they have no idea how long you've been there. Now, modern technology, kind of that closed loop system that we're talking about, they could go back and look at video cameras. Heck, some systems actually go and they key off the plate anyway. So, you know, times have moved ahead, but that's a proactive versus the reactive model of you're going to have to pay whatever the maximum rate is because we have no idea when you came in. We can't trust you. It's the same thing. You have a cybersecurity incident, you have nothing documented, and you're a completely reactive model. Guess what? All of that needs to go into a discovery process now, which is going to significantly slow the process. And you have the danger of we're not even going to be able to define. You could have had nothing on your machine, but they have to assume that you had a lot of information on that machine. So the fines and the related issues that come along with that are going to be significantly higher, especially when you've shown that you weren't doing your due diligence. You weren't doing any type of proactive thing. Uh, you will not get cybersecurity insurance coverage. Claim will be denied on that one, I think, hands down. But you know, really just kind of summing up, I think, what the difference is between the proactive and the reactive model. Proactive is closed loop monitoring, constantly readjusting that compass to make sure that you are in your envelope of operation. Reactive, we don't need that. If something happens, we'll just call somebody. We got insurance. And that's what's changed. The insurance part, take that out of the equation. If you're not doing your due diligence, if you're not doing that proactive piece, that it goes away. Is antivirus proactive? Well, in and of itself, no. But it's part of a proactive security program. You need to cover a lot of bases. And our 15 minutes is too short to even cover the bullet points. But just having something installed there is not enough. That monitoring piece, that constant adjustment, making sure that things are the way that they are, documents are important in that proactive process. That's probably one of the most important parts of the proactive process is that things are documented. There is an audit log, an audit trail that can be gone through to make sure that things are operating within those parameters. And that is the key difference between the proactive and reactive models in relationship to cybersecurity. So let me see if we have any questions because we're coming up on our 15 minutes. I think this is one of my peers, but I'm gonna take it because it's a really good point. So, what does proactive versus reactive look like from a MSP's perspective in terms of selling blocks of hours is what a lot of MSPs used to do versus selling a proactive contract. And the devil's in the details, but a lot of people are of the opinion that having that month to month contract, and when I say a lot of people, I'm not talking on the MSP side, I'm talking about our clients, our prospects. Our clients know, but our prospects don't always. There are a lot of reasons why we need that recurring revenue and why it doesn't shift that much. We try to keep it so that it's budgeted and We really work every year to make sure that that is a budgeted items because we really don't want any surprise expenses for our clients. What does that do in terms of service? It really incentivizes us as MSPs to make sure that the line is quiet. We don't want to see a lot of issues. Why? Those issues are coming out of the bottom line because we have to deal with them. Here's a little secret: allowing any type of reactivity inside of because of lapse of the proactive pieces is going to upset your clients because they are going to have to call in a lot. They're going to have a lot of tickets to go through. They're going to have a lot of churn with IT stuff happening, as opposed to the proactive model where we do a lot of pre-planning up front. And yes, it is a lot of pre-planning. It can take, when we onboard, it can take 3, 6 months to quiet those tickets down if the client is willing to invest in new equipment and all the things that kind of go along with making sure that you have a good technological foothold. Um, there's a lot of stuff that goes on. It's a massive amount of work for the incoming MSP to do it at that level. And really that's really the crux of the situation in terms of, MSPs versus that break fix model that I was talking about. Aside from the cybersecurity model, we're now just talking about like the IT model and how you pay for your services. Um, so if you're in the break fix model, your um, your clients uh, don't realize this, but you would be incentivized to have more work because it's a billable per hour kind of work. And if you're making a margin, the higher the top at the same margin, the higher the bottom. So you're going to bring more profit into your company if you are billing at that level. So I hope that makes sense. I hope that helps. I hope I answered my question I couldn't have paid for to have asked. Thank you for asking that. I don't recognize the name, but I hope that helps a little bit with the understanding of where the MSP models vary as well in terms of what they're incentivized by. Again, if you're a MSP that's doing month to month contracts with everything kind of included, then you want to make sure that you do as much proactive work as you can to reduce the noise on the line and have very happy clients. Unfortunately, what does that lead to? What are we paying you for? It's the old IT dilemma. When you're doing managed services, if you're not doing your job and they have to call you all the time because things are broken, what are we paying you for? Is what you get. If you're doing a great job and they never have to call you, then they ask, what are we paying you for? So it's the age old MSP, recurring revenue uh, uh, kind of joke, but we get around that just by making sure that we are highly communicative with our clients. We sit often with them to talk about where their companies are going because we want to adjust that. And I think the value that we provide comes through in those conversations and the fact that they haven't had any breaches and that when they do have issues, they're addressed with the importance and um, priority that they need to be addressed with. So a little bit of a different model. All right, I don't see any more questions, so I am going to wrap it up today. Again, have a great spring. We'll see you next Friday. Same bad time, same bad channel. Have a great week.